See, the thing about the adaptation of The Walking Dead from the comic books to the TV series is that they have to make a crap load of changes. The introduction of a character as iconic as Daryl Dixon has changed the storyline so much. The inclusion and omission of key characters from the comic book to the TV series has upended and changed things, as well as the introduction of new characters to take on tiny roles of characters from the comics. You're probably completely confused about what I'm talking about. I'm trying to make sense for you of what I realized in terms of this particular season as well as previous seasons of AMC's The Walking Dead, which is why I am not angry with the writers for what they had to do because they had their work cut out for them. I am pleased that we finally made it to the Whisperer's storyline. We met Alpha, we met Beta, and now after watching episode 15 of season 9, we made it to the Pike scene, the infamous Pike scene. The reason why having the fair was such a bad idea and why so many people on social media who read the comics or people who just knew what was going to happen were none too happy to know that the fair was coming. All right, let's get down to this recap and review. I'm Sage Valentine, for those of you who don't know, and welcome to my channel. Welcome to my review of AMC's The Walking Dead Season 9, episode number 15, entitled The Calm Before. It's funny how this episode was called The Calm Before, considering that I don't see how the decapitation and murder of like 10 characters is the calm, which makes me dread what the storm will be. I will preface this video by saying I tried to do my review last night and I couldn't bring myself to rewatch the episode because I was up later than I should have been after watching episode 15 because I was trying to make sense of what the hell happened and why I felt that the writers chose this specific group of characters to kill off. Not so much Tammy Rose because she dies in the comics, but the rest of the 9. Like, what was the reason why they decided, in my opinion, to kill off these people instead of killing off some of those people and then killing off the 2 others that died in the comics? But we'll chat about that in a minute, so let's get this recap started off. Alrighty, so we see a really like heartfelt but at the same time creepy, in my opinion, opening scene, including this woman and man who were married and they were happy and they were battling walkers and they found the hilltop, and on their anniversary the woman created this medallion that had an H on it. She gave it to her husband. And then a couple years later, the woman has longer hair and they are getting ready to leave to go to the kingdom. The woman has a box that's wooden that she made. And she carved in the H, and she had more medallions because her husband told her a little bit earlier to make more because it would be nice to give out to the people, because he was unsure as to why she put an H on the medallion. Obviously the H was for hope. And these people crossed paths because it was the husband, the wife, and then there were 2 more people. They crossed Alpha's path and Alpha killed them and then scalped the woman. The one thing about this episode that I liked was the jumping around of the timeline, because the part at the fair was an earlier time, whereas the evening later in the dark was a later time, and then the time where they saw the heads was like the next morning. I love the timelines because I'm always paying attention to each one and I get where it is, so nobody needs to explain that fully to me. So we get to the part with the actual fair. Ezekiel gives this rousing speech paying homage to Rick and Carl and Paul Jesus Rovia. And then Jerry's little son releases 3 little doves. We see quite a few characters that we know in the crowd, showing how all these groups from the Oceanside, Hilltop, and Alexandria came together with the kingdom to celebrate and have this beautiful fair. Well, they thought it was a beautiful fair. They didn't know what was coming for them. Everyone's happy and hopeful. Ezekiel wants to go with Carol to find Henry, but Carol's like, no, you stay here because the kingdom needs you. Then we see Daryl, Connie, Michonne, Judith, Dog, Henry, and Lydia showing up to the hilltop. That whole scene was beautiful. The hug between Henry, Ezekiel, and Carol was sad. Michonne and Ezekiel greeting each other after not seeing each other for so long was a really sweet scene. Judith finally seeing the Queen and the King, aka Aunt Carol and Uncle Ezekiel, was so sweet and so sad. Tara is none too happy to see Lydia, and I don't blame her because Lydia equals trouble. Obviously, having Lydia anywhere is trouble because Alpha's going to come for her. And that was the trouble looming for the past couple episodes, ever since Alpha was basically introduced. So all the leaders are gathering together to see how they're going to deal with this issue involving Hilltop, because of the fact that Alpha's obviously going to be pissed at Hilltop the most for keeping Lydia or taking in Lydia. So we see this scene with Tara, Gabriel, Henry, Lydia, Ezekiel, Michonne, and Rachel. And a lot of people were confused about Rachel. I was wondering who that girl was until she spoke about how she was about to kill Tara at one point. And I said, okay, that's that little girl. And then when I saw her sign her name on that charter, I said, yeah, that's that little girl. So Alexandria decided to grant asylum to Lydia. And Tara said that she knew that the hilltop would be Alpha's main target. Michonne calls her out on that. And the part she calls her out on is the fact that Tara's a little bit iffy about Lydia, but she says, listen, I see why Rick didn't trust me when I came to the gate at the prison, just like I see why we didn't trust you, Tara, when you were out there with the governor trying to fight us. Subtle shade, but shade nonetheless. Everyone is going to spare some of their best fighters to go out and face the Whisperers if they come to Hilltop, because Tara lost a lot of people, especially her best fighters, so she's going to need more people. So Michonne proposes this mutual protection pact. Everyone agrees, including Tara, and Ezekiel has them sign the charter. Tara and Michonne make up. They say they both were right, but in this case, Michonne was the rightest, because Michonne had been talking about them having this fair, putting themselves in one area, traveling on the road. It was dangerous. God knows who could be watching. Michonne was right. So everyone signs except Michonne, because she allows Gabriel to sign to represent Alexandria. So everybody's happy at the fair. In the next scene, we see what Lydia and Henry see: Enid helping Sadiq, Tammy Rose and the baby, Eugene getting dunked by little Judith after talking a whole heap of junk. Lydia is amazed by the kingdom. Henry decides he wants to go with the group to protect Hilltop. But Carol is not too keen on that, because of the fact that obviously Henry is hurt, and plus the fact that Henry is helpful, but he has a tendency to get in the way. So Carol and Ezekiel are happy about Lydia and Henry being in a relationship, and I'm just shaking my head. Enid calls Alden her boyfriend. Luke tries to convince Alden to sing for everybody, especially for Enid. So we learned that obviously Kelly was worried about Connie, especially when Connie ran to go save the little baby who's now known as Adam, and the fact that Connie was with Daryl on the road and she was in danger, and Kelly feels like Connie is going to get herself killed. Me personally, I feel like both of these characters are in trouble. Because anytime you have a conversation like this on The Walking Dead, you already know somebody from this little duo is going to die soon. They may not die in the finale, but if another omen like this pops up, if one of them says something like this, if one of them ends up in a situation where they almost die, guess what? Eventually they're going to be killed off. So Michonne tells Sadiq that she is leaving for the hilltop to go help out and protect the hilltop. She tells him to stay and enjoy the fair and babysit Judith, and he tells her that he needs the experience, and she's like, what do you mean? And he's like, oh, I'll tell you later. So I guess he's going to tell her all about the whole Rosita situation. So Adelaide apologizes to Henry, and while she does that, Rodney and Gage come over to Lydia, and they're talking a whole bunch of junk, and they kind of low-key threaten Lydia by saying that if she's going to live with them, they hope she doesn't cause any problems. And I'm sitting there as somebody who read the spoiler. And in fact, I read 2 spoilers. And I saw the names of the 2 teenagers on there. And I was like, yeah, 2 of you are not going to be living there. So what does it matter anyway? Don't be rude. So Tara stays behind at Hilltop rather than go with her people to Hilltop. Now, that's a note I just wrote, but I meant the kingdom instead of the Hilltop. My bad. Daryl asks Connie to feed dog, and he tells her to be safe because she told him to be safe. And I really like their friendship. Their friendship is cute. Ezekiel said that he would be honored for Daryl to call Kingdom his home. Ezekiel says Ezekiel would be honored if Daryl chose to live at the kingdom. Carol tells Ezekiel to enjoy the fair, and then she and that crew leave to head to Hilltop. So we see the Highwaymen, 2 of them, Ozzy and Alec, along with DJ, and they are out basically on security detail looking around, and then the crew that left the kingdom meets up with them. And they basically show the crew the scene that Alpha left after she killed that small group with the husband and the wife and the 2 people in the beginning of the episode. And apparently those people put up a fight. Ezekiel would be honored if Daryl chose to live at the kingdom. Carol tells Ezekiel to enjoy the fair, and then she and that crew leave to head to Hilltop. So we see the Highwaymen, 2 of them, Ozzy and Alec, along with DJ, and they are out basically on security detail looking around, and then the crew that left the kingdom meets up with them. And they basically show the crew the scene that Alpha left after she killed that small group with the husband and the wife and the 2 people in the beginning of the episode. And apparently those people put up a fight. And then the consensus is that the group that's gathered at this scene needs to split up. The majority of them need to head to Hilltop. Michonne, Daryl, and Carol are going to follow the tracks to see where they lead. Yumiko and Magna want to go, but Yumiko's like, nah, Magna, you head to Hilltop and make sure everything is safe and our people are safe. We are going to, or I will head, I think Magna told, okay. Now here's where this scene differs from the comic book, because Alpha showed up to the fair bald-headed and all. We didn't know who she was in the comics. Then we learned who she was later, but we're just like, who is this bald-headed lady walking around? And some of the people were just kind of like with her, but not enough to sit up there and say, who the hell is this woman? She just kind of slipped in. She took advantage of the fact that security was lax because of this fair and the fact that all these communities are coming together, and clearly in the comic book everybody didn't know everyone. And it's amazing how that idea was translated to the TV series, because with this mess that happened with Michonne and the kids and how everybody split up and Michonne decided that she wanted to lock down Alexandria, that's where all the communication ended. So nobody knew each other. People were just meeting. Alpha's one smart cookie, and you can tell that the Whisperers really planned out their attack and knew what they were going to do based on what Alpha was thinking, and probably Beta as well. But anyway, Rosita finds Eugene working on his radio, and she tells Eugene, despite the fact that everything is what it is, I'm pregnant with Sadiq's baby, I'm with Father Gabriel, but we can still talk. And clearly Eugene still loves Rosita, and they were together in the comic book. So when on The Talking Dead somebody mentioned about Rosita and Eugene possibly being an item, they were not only making a joke but referring to what happens in the comics, kind of hoping it would happen in the TV series. So anyway, Rosita decides to help Eugene with the radio. Now, Henry is chatting with Frankie. He looks lost, and I'm just like, why is Frankie popping up? This is me watching the show. But then I remembered, yeah, Frankie's going to be one of those heads. So Henry is completely disoriented as he's walking around because he's looking for Lydia, and then he comes upon Frankie and what looks like another one of Negan's former wives, and Frankie kind of talks to him and such, and I'm just sitting there like, this is a random way to reintroduce us to Frankie, and where the hell was Frankie living? Then I realized by the time I watched this the second time that she probably went off to Oceanside with the women. So Tara is talking to Rachel and Father Gabriel, and they're talking about how they could start this whole training thing, and they could have like places where they could train and strengthen everybody else up and make them into fighters, and how they're going to start when the fair ends. She's really anxious to head back to Hilltop. She said that she wants her people to know that they can count on her when trouble comes, and that they have a leader they can count on. So Luke and Alden are discussing what song they will play. Then Henry finds Lydia all on her own. Alpha's browsing like she's in the mall. And then she overhears Tammy and Earl talking about how they're going to name the baby Adam. And now I see why she killed Tammy Rose as far as the TV show is concerned, because I guess she's pissed that Tammy Rose had that baby, and Alpha wanted that baby to be Walker Chow. So Henry tells Lydia that he likes her, and they kiss, and it's kind of cute. Henry heads off to check on a noisy pipe, and he asks Lydia to save him a seat next to her for the movie that's coming up. So Alpha sees Rosita and Eugene, and she just kind of stops like, yo, and then that's when she meets Ezekiel, and she falls into this new role, mentions Michonne, acts like her name is Debbie, and she's from Alexandria, and I'm just like, why aren't bells going off with Ezekiel? Then I realized this is where Henry gets that whole shiny, happy people, let's trust people thing, open up our doors type deal from Ezekiel. So Alpha's like, you know, I'm looking for warm clothes because it's going to be a very long winter. Okay, so then we get to see movie time. They're watching a Baby Huey movie, Quack-a-Doodle-Doo. I saw that when I was a kid. So Jerry wonders where Henry is, and Lydia's sitting alone by herself, and all of a sudden Alpha sits right next to her, and I'm like, that's super creepy. So then Daryl says to Alpha in a flash forward, you ain't getting Lydia back. Michonne reveals to Alpha that they all granted Lydia asylum, and if Alpha tries to come and get her, their groups will retaliate against her and the Whisperers. And Alpha asks if Michonne speaks for Daryl, and Daryl's like, we speak for each other. Alpha says Lydia's not a concern anymore. This is not about Lydia, and at this point I'm wondering, is Lydia dead? Like, what the hell happened to Lydia? And Alpha says she's not here for them threatening her. And she makes Daryl come with her, and she shows him this huge swarm, like the biggest swarm I've ever seen of walkers at the bottom of a cliff. Now, somebody on social media was like, how are there this many walkers? Shouldn't they have been dealt with? I'm like, no. The ratio between humans and walkers, it's like humans 1, walkers 20 million. There's like, what is it, 500 walkers to every 1 person, or maybe it's like 10 times that, if you get what I'm saying. But as far as that herd or that swarm pertains to this, the Whisperers are in that swarm and they've infiltrated it. So that shows us that we don't know how many Whisperers there are, but given what I know from the comics and how I figured it out on the TV show as well, I believe that there are more Whisperers than there were Saviors. Like, I believe those Whisperers have been around for a long time. I believe that they have been watching the group for a long time. I don't think they just popped up and just happenstance, cross paths with Team Family. I believe they've been around for a very long time. So, Alpha reveals she let Michonne, Carol, Yumiko all live, and she said that the communities of Hilltop, Alexandria, Oceanside, and the Kingdom are all shrines to a long dead world. And her people follow her because she is the Alpha, and without her there's chaos. The next time you cross into her land, she is going to have her people cross into Daryl and the crew's lands, meaning head to Hilltop, the Kingdom, probably Oceanside. I'm sure they got people watching Oceanside and Alexandria. And she claims that she marked the land so you will see it when you leave. Now, in the comic book, she says something to Rick about following the posts. So the fact that she didn't even say that probably angered quite a few comic book fans, but for me, it didn't. I was just like, what in the hell does that mean? How is this going to be interpreted? So then we find out that Alpha basically abandoned Lydia. And she told Lydia that you are not a Whisperer, you never were. So that's even worse than killing Lydia. That means that she's done with Lydia. And she doesn't think that Daryl could protect Lydia, and she hopes that she's wrong. Now, Daryl meets up with Carol, Michonne, and Yumiko. Beta sees Alpha crying, and I feel like Beta is the only one who sees like the true Alpha, not only without her mask, but without her psychological mask. Because Alpha does not do anything to him when he sees her crying. She just tells him, just leave me be for a minute. And then another Whisperer catches Alpha crying. Alpha is none too happy. She's just like, come here. And then she stabs him in the neck. Now, in the comic book, this happens. And this was a funny scene to me because I'm just like, dude, what in the hell were you doing? The guy was trying to console Alpha, and she cut his throat. I mean, he had it coming, because, like, I don't know if she would have called me, I'd have been like, who? What? And gone the other way. No. So, anyway, that was my favorite scene from the comics. So, Michonne, Carol, Daryl, and Yumiko meet back up again. They find Sadiq tied up and beaten. He can barely speak. He's pointing to the top of the hill. Well, as the camera pans up the hill, we see 10 pikes, 10 of them. It's a very gruesome scene. I knew it was going to be rough from seeing it in the comics, but honey, Walking Dead put their foot in it because it was even worse. And I didn't think it could be even worse, and I figured I could handle this. I got this. Nah, I didn't have it at all. So the heads are shown in order, and this is how I'm going to mention them. Ozzy, Alec, and DJ were all beheaded. We see a flash of Eugene asking about Frankie, then we see Frankie's head. We see a flash of Earl, Connie, and Kelly looking for Tammy Rose while Earl is holding baby Adam. We see Tammy Rose's head. We see Gage asking about Addie and Rodney. We see both their heads. We see Enid's head after seeing Alden singing and looking around like, where the hell is Enid? We see Tara's head after seeing Father Gabriel asking, I forgot who he asked, like, if you see Tara, let me know because I want to talk to her before she goes. And then we see Tara's head, and then the final head we see is Henry. But they decided to drag, and by they I mean the writers and the directors and such, decided to kind of drag that scene and to make it like a big reveal of seeing Henry's head. And Daryl sees it. Then Carol comes, and Daryl kind of grabs her, and he's just like, look at me, look at me. And he did that, if I remember correctly, in season 2 when Rick was about to shoot zombie Sophia in the head. I feel so sorry for Carol. This is the third or fourth child that died, or actually 5th child that died that was in her care, because you got to think about Sophia, you got to think about Mika and Lizzie, and then the little kid whose name is lost on me from Alexandria. I can see his face, but for some reason I can't think of his name. If you remember, leave me a comment. Yeah, and now she lost Henry. And a lot of people were pissed about Henry dying, and I'm just like, dude, Henry was not long for this world. Not only because of his shiny, happy, the world is beautiful ideals that he got from Ezekiel, but also because he's a character that took on another character's story arc, and it was time for him to go, because that story arc ended. And there's some comic book fans who are mighty pissed, like, what in the hell? Why in the hell did they kill Henry if he was going to take on that storyline? Because that's the writer's way of telling us that storyline is over. It's done. Carl's dead. We're probably going to give the other part of that storyline to either Judith, or we're going to give that storyline to a completely different character, because that's the way Walking Dead is working. They're just like, we're moving on. Sucks, on a side note, because I wanted to see Carl have that storyline, but it is what it is. They're moving on. So then Sadiq gives this speech, and he says this. I'm going to read my whole note for you, just in case you forgot. So Sadiq tells how he was taken with the others. He was left alive to tell the story, and he got hit in the head, probably by Alpha, because she whispered in his ear and told him, tell them. He was alone when he woke up. He said that Alpha and the Whisperers did what they did to scare all the group's team family and to drive them apart, but all this is going to do is bring them together. Really, Ozzy, Alec, and DJ found Sadiq and the other 4. Or is it 5? Anyway, everyone fought hard along with Sadiq. They defended each other, sacrificed for each other till the very end, till their time was cut short. But ours is continuing on. This is what he said. So we have to keep going for them, all of us. We need to honor them. Remember these friends and family that fought as heroes. That's the story he wanted them to remember. And then we see Lydia and Daryl heading to the Pikes. The heads are all gone and more than likely buried, or they were put down and then buried. And Lydia left an H medallion necklace by the Pike where Henry's head was. It's basically in remembrance for him, and then all of a sudden it starts snowing, so I guess we're going to see what the storm is. Really quickly, as far as the choice of heads, I was completely flabbergasted because the first spoiler that I saw included the following. It was Alec, Ozzy, Father Gabriel, Kelly, Scott, Addie, Rodney, Tara, Enid, and Henry. Then all of a sudden it switched. And people put spoilers out on the internet. I did what I could to keep it quiet. I didn't tell anybody on social media. I didn't tell anybody I knew. I kept that to myself because I was like, dude, I'm not going to tell people and ruin this, but it was already there, so people saw it. There were 10 heads on pikes on the TV show. There were 12 heads on pikes in the comics. 2 more characters are going to die, and I believe it's going to be 2 more major characters. People are so pissed that Ezekiel and Rosita were not the 2 heads on the pikes. But what I can say to you about that is that the writers could kill them off in the finale. They could kill them off later on and get creative. But 2 more characters are going to die, and it's going to hurt. I don't know who it's going to be. I'm not even looking at the spoilers this time. I stumbled upon the spoiler on Sunday by accident. The previous one was a speculation. The person had no clue. But they were right about the majority of the people who died. But I will be back to review this episode early. I will not be uploading it on a Tuesday again. But I felt the need to sit down and just do this review on Tuesday because I could not bring myself to do it earlier because that episode was a lot. And this is yet another episode that I will not be able to rewatch. Like, there are episodes where if I'm watching a whole season, I just skip the whole episode and go on. But this one was rough. I love you all. Take care. And I will be back here to review after the finale. So, peace out, guys. Love you all. Bye, guys. Love you. Bye.